Open your eyes. How long ago did you first have that dream? A year? 5 years? 10? And what happened? Nothing happened. That's what happened. Nothing. Because something got in the way. Something quiet. Something invisible. Something that doesn't announce itself with a loud voice or a dramatic entrance. Now, before you cross your arms and get defensive, before you say, "That's not me, I'm just tired, I'm just busy, I'm just going through a lot right now," I want you to hear me clearly. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to shame you. I'm not standing on this stage looking down at you like I've got it all figured out. Because I don't. And I haven't. And there were years of my life, years, where laziness owned me so completely that I didn't even know I was its prisoner. I know what it feels like to have potential and waste it. I know what it feels like to look in the mirror and see someone who could be so much more, but just isn't. I know what it feels like to watch other people build the life you dreamed about while you sat on the couch convincing yourself that tomorrow was going to be the day. I know that feeling. And I am done with it. And today, right here, right now, I'm going to help you get done with it too. Because laziness is not your identity. Laziness is not your destiny. Laziness is not some permanent condition you were born with that you simply have to accept. Laziness is a habit. It is a pattern. It is a pattern. It is a lie you've been telling yourself for so long that it started to feel like the truth. And today we are going to expose that lie. We are going to drag it out into the light. We are going to look at it clearly, understand it deeply. And then, one by one, we are going to dismantle it completely. But first, I need to tell you a story. There was a boy, a young boy, growing up in a small town where the biggest ambition most people had was to get a stable government job, marry young, and retire quietly. Not because the people were bad. They were good, loving, hard-working people. But because that was the ceiling they had been handed. That was the blueprint. And nobody questioned the blueprint. This boy had a fire in him. You could see it in his eyes when he was little. He used to draw these wild pictures of skyscrapers he was going to build, of speeches he was going to give, of stages he was going to stand on. His teachers called him a dreamer. And they didn't mean it as a compliment. They meant it as a warning. Be realistic, they said. Study hard, get your grades, follow the path. So he did what most of us do when the world tells us to shrink. He folded up those drawings. He put the dreams away. He followed the path. And for a while, the path wasn't bad. He got decent grades. He went to a decent college. He got a decent job. He lived a decent life. And on the surface, everything looked fine. But inside something was rotting. Because every single day he woke up and went to work doing something that meant nothing to him. Every single day he came home, sat on that couch, turned on the television and told himself, "I'll start working on my real dreams this weekend." And the weekend came. And the weekend went. And nothing happened. Weeks turned into months. Months turned into years. And one day, he was sitting at his desk at work, staring at a spreadsheet, when a colleague leaned over and said, "Hey, did you hear? Marcus just launched his own company. They just closed a $5 million funding round." Marcus, his old college friend. The one he used to laugh with in the dormitory. The one who had the same dreams, the same fire, the same wild ideas. Except Marcus hadn't folded up his drawings. Marcus had kept going. While this boy was watching television, Marcus was building. While this boy was saying someday, Marcus was saying today. And in that moment, sitting at that desk, staring at that spreadsheet, this boy felt something crack inside him. Not break, crack. Because something breaking can be dramatic and loud. A crack is quiet. A crack is the sound of the truth finally getting through. That boy was me. I was 29 years old. 9 years of my life had slipped through my fingers while I was busy being comfortable. 9 years of potential, of possibility, of purpose, gone. And I remember driving home that night, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. And I said out loud to nobody in the car, "I am done. I am done with this. I am done letting laziness run my life." And that was the beginning. Not of immediate success, not of overnight transformation. The beginning is never glamorous. The beginning is just a decision. A quiet, fierce, non-negotiable decision that things are going to be different from this day forward. And I'm here to help you make that decision. Today. So let's talk about what laziness actually is. Because most people misunderstand it completely. They think laziness is about being physically inactive. They think lazy people are the ones lying on the couch all day, doing absolutely. And yes, sometimes that's what it looks like. But that's the surface. That's the symptom, not the disease. Real laziness, deep, chronic, life stealing laziness, is not primarily about physical inaction. It is about mental avoidance. It is the art of staying busy with things that don't matter, so you never have to face the things that do. It's scrolling through your phone for 2 hours instead of starting that project. It's reorganizing your desk for the fourth time instead of sitting down and doing the work. It's having a 30-minute conversation about what you're going to do instead of spending 30 minutes actually doing it. Laziness is a master of disguise. It will dress itself up as research. I'm not ready to start yet. I'm still in the planning phase. It will dress itself up as self-care. With D, self up as self-care. I need to rest first. I can't pour from an empty cup. It will dress itself up as perfectionism. I'll start when everything is perfectly in place, when the timing is right, when I have all the resources I need. It will even dress itself up as wisdom. I don't want to rush into things. I need to be strategic. And none of those things are inherently wrong. Research is good, rest is necessary. Planning has value, strategy is important. But when those things become excuses, when they become the reason you never actually take the leap, then they are just laziness wearing a costume. And a costume doesn't change what's underneath. So how did we get here? How does a human being, full of potential, full of dreams, full of capacity, end up trapped in this cycle of chronic avoidance? How does the fire go out? Let me tell you, it starts with fear, not the dramatic, heart-pounding fear of physical danger. No, this is a quieter fear, a more insidious fear. The fear of failure, the fear of embarrassment, the fear of trying your absolute best and still not being good enough. Because here's the brutal truth about laziness that nobody talks about. Laziness is often not about not caring. It's about caring too much. It's the armor we put on when the stakes feel too high. Think about it. When you don't try, you can't fail. When you don't start, you can't be rejected. When you never show your work, nobody can criticize it. Laziness at its core is the ultimate defense mechanism. It's the subconscious mind saying, if I never truly go for it, I never have to know what happens if I do. And that's safer than finding out. But here's what that armor does over time. It doesn't just protect you from failure. It protects you from everything. It protects you from growth, from learning, from becoming, from living full. You walk around in this heavy armor, and yes, you feel safe inside it, but you're also suffocating inside it. And after years and years of wearing it, you don't even remember what it felt like to breathe freely. There was a woman I met at a conference a few years ago. I'll call her Diana. The Diana was brilliant. Sharp mind, warm heart, overflowing with ideas. She had wanted to be a writer since she was a little girl. Her mother used to read to her every night before bed, and she would lie there in the dark after the light went out, creating whole worlds in her head. She started writing stories when she was 8 years old, and everyone who read them said the same thing. This child has something special. But somewhere along the way, Diana had shown one of her stories to someone who didn't handle it carefully. A teacher, a classmate, someone who responded with criticism that landed not like feedback, but like a verdict. And something in Diana closed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet closing, like a flower that folds its petals in when the temperature drops. She stopped writing. Not completely. She still scribbled in journals late at night when nobody could see. But she never showed anyone again. She went to college, got a communications degree, worked in marketing. She was good at her job. She was reliable, professional, competent. But the writer inside her, the girl who lay in the dark creating worlds, that girl was still there, waiting. When I met Diana, she was 43 years old. Her children were grown, she had space, even had a laptop and a quiet room at the back of the house that she'd set up as a writing space. But every time she sat down to write, something stopped her. She'd spend an hour organizing her notes. She'd read articles about writing instead of writing. She'd tell herself the idea wasn't good enough yet. She needed to develop it more. She'd check her email. She'd make another cup of coffee. And then somehow another day would be over without a single word on the page. Diana looked me in the eyes and she said, I think I'm just lazy. I think I'm just not disciplined enough. And I said to her, Diana, you are not lazy. You are afraid. There is a difference. And until you see that difference clearly, you will keep fighting the wrong enemy. Because you cannot fight fear with discipline. You cannot bully yourself out of emotional avoidance. If the root is fear, then attacking yourself with just do it. Stop being lazy. What's wrong with you is like putting a bandage on a broken bone. The external symptom might look addressed for a moment, but the root cause is still there, untouched, doing its work in the dark. So the first step in killing your laziness is not about pushing harder. It's about looking honestly at what's underneath. What are you afraid of? I'm asking you, are you afraid of? I'm asking you directly. What is the actual fear? Say it out loud if you have to. Write it down. Because when fear is unexamined, it operates at full strength. But when you bring it into the light and look at it clearly, when you say, the reason I haven't started this business is because I'm afraid of losing money and having people say, I told you so, something changes. The fear doesn't disappear, but it loses some of its power. You stop being unconsciously controlled by something you've never consciously acknowledged. And once you can see the fear for what it is, once you can name it, look at it, understand it, then you can have a different kind of conversation with yourself. Not stop being afraid, because that never works. But I see you, fear. I understand why you're here, and I'm going forward anyway. That is courage, not the absence of fear. The presence of fear and the decision to move forward regardless. Now, the second thing that creates and sustains laziness is something I call the comfort trap. Human beings are wired for comfort. Evolutionarily speaking, this made perfect sense. In a world where resources were scarce and physical danger was constant, conserving energy and avoiding unnecessary risk was smart. Your brain's job, at a fundamental biological level, is not to make you happy. It's not to help you build a successful business or write a book or run a marathon. Your brain's primary directive is to keep you alive. And alive in evolutionary terms means comfortable, safe, and energy efficient. The problem is that we are no longer living in caves. We are no longer hunting for food or running from predators. The threats that our ancestors faced every day, the ones that required constant vigilance and energy conservation, those threats are largely gone. But the brain didn't get that memo. The brain is still operating on ancient software in a modern world. And so it still screams at you to stay comfortable, to stay safe, to avoid the unknown, to conserve energy, to not take risks. And the world has made this so easy. Never in human history has comfort been more accessible, more immediate, or more sophisticated than right now. You can lie in your bed and with one thumb access an infinite stream of entertainment designed by the most brilliant engineers and psychologists on the planet to keep you engaged. You can order food to your door without speaking to a single human being. You can socialize, shop, learn, be entertained, and feel connected to the world, all without ever leaving your couch. The comfort trap is not a moral failing. It is an entirely rational response to an environment that has made comfort the path of least resistance. Your brain chooses comfort not because you are weak or flawed. Your brain chooses comfort because that is exactly what it was designed to do. The question is not why you keep falling into the comfort trap. The question is, how do you rewire yourself to choose discomfort? Because growth lives in discomfort. Every single thing you want, every dream, every goal, every better version of yourself lives on the other side of discomfort. The person you want to become does not live in the comfort zone. They live in the stretch zone. The place where things are hard, where you don't know what you're doing yet, where you might fail, where you will definitely feel awkward and uncertain and afraid. That's where transformation happens. Think about every significant achievement in your life. Think about the things you're most proud of. Were any of them easy? Were any of them comfortable? When you learned to walk as a child, you fell. Over and over and over and over. You fell so many times. If you, as a toddler, had the adult mind's ability to rationalize and avoid discomfort, you would have fallen once, decided this walking thing was too difficult and too risky, and spent the rest of your life crawling. But you didn't. You fell. And you got back up. And you fell. And you got back up again. Not because it felt good, but because the pull toward where you were going was stronger than the pain of where you were. That instinct is still inside you. It never left. You just buried it under years of choosing comfort. There's a concept in psychology called homeostasis, the tendency of a system to seek and maintain a condition of equilibrium or stability. Your body does this physiologically, and your mind does it psychologically. Usas. When things get uncomfortable, when you push beyond your normal boundaries, everything in you fights to return to what's familiar. This is why you can have a breakthrough day where you exercise, you eat well, you work on your goals, you feel amazing. And then the next day, some invisible force seems to pull you back to your old patterns. That's not weakness, that's homeostasis. Your system trying to return to what it knows. Understanding this is crucial because it means that changing your habits is not about willpower in the traditional sense. Willpower is finite. Willpower gets depleted. You cannot white knuckle your way to permanent change through willpower alone. What you have to do is gradually, consistently, patiently shift the baseline. You have to make the new behavior familiar enough that it becomes the new normal. You have to make doing the work feel more like home than not doing the work. And how do you do that? You start smaller than you think you need to. I'm serious. This is one of the most counterintuitive pieces of this entire conversation, and I need you to really hear it. When most people decide to change their lives, they go big. They make the grand declaration. Starting Monday, I'm going to the gym every day. I'm cutting out sugar completely. I'm waking up at 5 in the morning. I'm spending 4 hours every evening on my business. And for 3 days, maybe a week, the adrenaline of the new beginning carries them through. And then real life happens. This a day. And missing one day feels like failure. And failure feels terrible. And when things feel terrible, the brain says, this isn't worth it, and retreats back to comfort. And the whole cycle starts again. The problem was never lack of motivation. The problem was that the target was set so high that any stumble felt like total defeat. The answer is this. Start so small it feels almost embarrassing. If you want to start exercising, don't commit to an hour at the gym. Commit to 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes. Put on your shoes and walk to the end of the block and back. That's it. Done. You succeeded. Tomorrow 5 minutes again. Next week maybe 7 minutes. You're not training for a marathon in week 1. You're training your brain to associate this new behavior with success rather than failure. You're laying down the neural pathway. You're making the new behavior familiar. James Clear, in his remarkable book Atomic Habits, talks about this beautifully. He calls it the 2-minute rule. Any habit you want to build, find the version of it that takes 2 minutes. Not because 2 minutes is the end goal, but because 2 minutes is easy enough that you'll actually do it. And the act of doing it consistently, even in its smallest form, creates the identity shift that ultimately drives lasting change. Because here's the real secret about motivation and laziness and habit. Action does not follow motivation. Motivation follows action. Read that again. Action does not follow motivation. Motivation follows action. We have it backwards. We sit around waiting to feel motivated before we start. We say, I'll start when I feel ready. I'll start when I feel inspired. I'll start when the timing feels right. But inspiration doesn't descend from the sky and land on you while you're sitting on the couch. Inspiration is generated by movement, by starting, by doing the first small thing, even badly, even reluctantly, even without feeling ready. The moment you start, something in your brain shifts. Something wakes up. The doing creates the wanting to do more. Athletes know this. Artists know this. Writers know this. You don't wait until you feel like writing to write. You sit down and you write badly, and then, usually within about 10 to 15 minutes, something starts to flow. The creativity, the focus, the momentum, they come after you start, not before. Starting is the magic. Starting is everything. Let me tell you about a man named David Goggins. Some of you know this name. For those who don't, hear this story because it will change the way you think about human capacity forever. David Goggins grew up in a home defined by violence and poverty and fear. His father was abusive in ways I won't describe in detail here, but I'll say this. The childhood that Goggins survived would have crushed most people, would have justified a lifetime of victimhood, a lifetime of I couldn't do it because of what happened to me. And no one would have judged him for that. The world would have understood. But Goggins did something different. As a young man, he was overweight. By his own account, close to 300 pounds. He was working as a pest control worker, spraying cockroaches in restaurants at 2 in the morning. His life was going nowhere. And one night, he turned on the television and there was a documentary about Navy SEAL, the most elite warriors on earth. Men who ran hundreds of miles, who trained in conditions designed to break them. who pushed through physical and mental pain, that most people cannot even imagine. And something in David Goggins, this overweight, broken young man spraying cockroaches at 2 in the morning, caught fire. He decided he was going to become a Navy SEAL. Do you understand how impossible that sounded? He had months to lose over 100 pounds before even being eligible to apply. The Navy SEAL training program, BUD-S, has a dropout rate of approximately 80% among people who are already peak physical specimens. The odds against David Goggins were not just long, they were laughable. He didn't care. He ran in trash bags to lose weight faster. He trained in the freezing cold. He pushed himself beyond every limit he had ever known. And then he pushed past those limits too. He failed Hell Week the first time. He went back. He failed it again. He went back again. He went back again. And the third time, broken, sleep deprived, suffering from stress fractures and hypothermia, he finished. David Goggins became a Navy SEAL. And then he just kept going. He ran ultramarathons, races of 100 miles or more, with no prior distance running experience. Experience. He broke the world record for pull-ups, doing over 4,000 in under 24 hours. He ran races back to back across the country. Not because it won, not because it won, not because it was comfortable. He did it because he had made a decision that the version of himself that was possible would not be left on the table. Now I am not telling you this story because you need to become David Goggins. You don't need to run 100 miles. You don't need to do 4,000 pull-ups. The specific details of Goggins' journey are his, but the principle, the absolute iron-willed refusal to let circumstances be an excuse, the decision to demand more of yourself than your circumstances seem to allow, that principle belongs to everyone. What's the cockroach at 2 in the morning moment in your life? What's the thing you're staring at right now that you know is not the life you were meant to live? Because for Goggins, that moment of clarity, ugly, uncomfortable, brutal as it was a gift. It was the gift of truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is the only foundation strong enough to build something real on. Your laziness, your stuckness, your comfortable mediocrity, it might feel safe right now, but somewhere inside you, in a part of yourself, you maybe haven't visited in a while, you know the truth. You know you're capable of more. You know the dreams you've been ignoring are real. You know the life you've been postponing is possible. The question is whether you are willing to let that truth break something in you so that something better can grow. Let's talk about the stories we tell ourselves. Because this might be the most important part of this whole conversation. Every single one of us is walking around with a story, a narrative about who we are, what we're capable of, what we deserve, what's possible for us. And most of the time, we are not even aware that this story is running. It's in the background, like an operating system, quietly determining what actions we take, what opportunities we notice, what risks we're willing to accept. Your laziness is not just a behavior, it is a story. It might sound like, I've never been a disciplined person. It might sound like, people like me don't succeed in that world. It might sound like, every time I've tried before, it hasn't worked out. It might sound like, I'm too old to start now. Or I'm too young, people won't take me seriously. Or I don't have the right education, the right connections, the right resources. These stories feel like observations. They feel like neutral assessments of reality, but they are not. They are beliefs, and beliefs are choices. Even if they don't feel like choices, even if they feel as solid and immovable as concrete, they are stories you have chosen to believe, usually because someone told them to you, or because an experience seemed to confirm them, and they can be unchosen. Here's how I know. Because I've watched people rewrite their stories in real time. I worked with a man. I'll call him Samuel. Samuel was a 47-year-old construction worker who had never finished high school. For his entire adult life, his story was, I'm not smart enough for anything other than manual work. That's just who I am. And he lived that story completely. He never questioned it. He never pushed against it. It was to him as obvious and inarguable as the fact that the sky is blue. Samuel came to one of my workshops, not because he wanted to be there, but because his daughter had bought him a ticket and asked him to go as a birthday gift. He sat in the back row with his arms crossed and the expression of a man who was fully committed to not being moved. But something happened about 2 hours in. When I started talking about the stories we inherit, The narratives handed to us by parents, teachers, communities, and how we often mistake those borrowed beliefs for truth about ourselves. Samuel uncrossed his arms. Samuel uncrossed his arms. By the end of the day, when I asked people to write down one story they had been carrying that they were now ready to release, Samuel wrote, I am not smart enough. He held it up, he read it out loud, and then when I asked people to rewrite their story in the present tense, Samuel wrote something that he later gave me permission to share. He wrote, I am a man who knows how to build things. I can learn anything I decide to learn. 2 years later, Samuel completed his JED. 6 months after that, he enrolled in a community college. The last update I received from him, he was studying to be an architect at 50 years old. Building buildings not just with his hands but with his mind. Was Samuel's story of I'm not smart true? No. But was it real to him? Absolutely. Absolutely. For 4 decades, it was as real to him as anything he had ever experienced. The story was real. The limitation was not. What story are you telling yourself that is real but not true? Find it, write it down, look at it, and then ask yourself, where did this story come from? Who did this story come from? Who wrote it? Was it your parents? A teacher who didn't believe in you? A failed attempt years ago that you've been using as a life sentence ever since? A culture that told you to stay in your lane, know your place, be realistic? Because here's what I know. You did not write the first chapter of your story. You were a child. You were absorbing the world around you, taking in everything, completely unable to filter what was true about you and what was simply the fear and limitation of the adults around you. The story you got handed was not chosen. It was received. But you are not a child anymore. You are sitting here right now, an adult with the capacity to think critically, to choose consciously, to decide what you believe. And that means you can look at the story you've been carrying and decide, does this serve me? Is this helping me move toward the life I want? Or is this just an old tape playing on repeat from a chapter that is long over? Because the past does not determine the future. The past is evidence of what has been. It is not a blueprint for what must be. The fact that you have failed before means you've tried. It means you have data. It means you know now than you did then. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is part of the process of success. Every single person you admire has failed, probably more times and more spectacularly than you have. The difference between them and people who stay stuck is not that they fail less. It's that they refuse to let failure become the final word. Think about Thomas Edison. Now I know you've heard the Edison story. I know you're thinking, here comes the light bulb speech. But stay with me, because there's a dimension to the story that most people miss. When asked about his 10,000 failed attempts to create the light bulb, 10,000, Edison famously said something along the lines of, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And we love that quote. We put it on posters. We share it on social media. But we love it as an abstraction, as a nice idea, without really sitting in what it means experientially. 10,000 attempts. Do you understand how long that takes? How many days? Not days of excited, passionate, inspired action, but days of grinding, tedious, uncertain, seemingly pointless effort. How many days does 10,000 attempts represent? How many mornings did Edison wake up and have to talk himself back into the laboratory when every rational voice in his head said, this isn't working, give it up, be reasonable? How many people around him shook their heads? How many investors lost faith? How many moments of genuine despair, genuine doubt, genuine what am I doing with my life did Edison experience before the light came on? The story we tell about Edison is, genius had a great idea and eventually succeeded. The true story is, an obsessive failure-soaked doubt filled human being refused to stop, over and over and over again. That stubborn refusal is available to you. Not the genius, not the special talent. Those things help, sure. But the refusal, the daily decision to show up and try again when nothing is working and nobody believes in you and you're not even sure you believe in yourself. That's a choice. And it's a choice. And it's a choice you can make. Now I want to talk about something that very few motivational speakers are willing to discuss honestly because it's uncomfortable. I want to talk about the people in your life, your environment. The people you surround yourself with, the conversations you're part of, the culture of your household, your friend group, your workplace. This environment has more influence over your behavior than almost anything else. more than your motivation, more than your discipline, more than your goals. Because human beings are deeply, profoundly social creatures, and we are constantly, unconsciously calibrating our behavior to match the people around us. If everyone in your immediate circle is comfortable with average, if the default conversation is about television gossip and complaining about life rather than building something, growing, taking risks, then you will, without even noticing, calibrate yourself toward that average. And not because those people are bad, not because they don't love you, but because belonging is one of the deepest human needs, and we unconsciously make ourselves similar to the people we belong with. This is not an excuse to abandon your friends or your family. Family is sacred and loyalty matters. But it is a reason to be very, very intentional about who you spend the most time with. It is a reason to seek out, actively, deliberately, people who are doing the things you want to do. People who are building, creating, growing, pushing, because their energy is contagious. Their standards become a reference point for yours. Their stories of what's possible expand your sense of what's possible for you. Jim Rohn said it decades ago, and it's never been more true. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, not just in terms of income or success, though that too, in terms of mindset, in terms of standards, in terms of what you think is acceptable for your own life. If your 5 people are all stuck, you will be stuck. If your 5 people are all growing, the gravitational pull growth is inescapable. Find your people. They exist. They are out there in communities and mastermind groups and workshops and online forums and local meetups. People who are obsessed with becoming better, with building something real, with refusing to settle. Find them. Spend time with them. Let their energy become your environment. And equally, and I say this with love, not judgment, be willing to create some distance from the people who drain you. The ones who, every time you share a dream, tell you why it won't work. The ones who call your ambition delusion and your work ethic obsession. The ones who are most comfortable when you are staying small. Not because they're evil, but because your growth is a mirror for their stagnation, and that's uncomfortable. The crabs in the bucket don't pull each other down out of malice. They pull each other down out of fear. They do it because they've given up on getting out themselves, and your attempt to climb threatens the story they've made peace with. Love them, but don't let them author your story. I want to spend some time now on the physical dimension of laziness, because this is something that gets overlooked in conversations about mindset and motivation. We talk about the mental game, the emotional architecture, the stories and the fears and the environment, and all of that matters enormously. But your body matters too. The state of your physical body has a profound and direct impact on your mental energy, your clarity, your motivation, your willingness to take action. When you are sleep deprived, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for willpower, decision making, and long-term thinking, is operating at massively reduced capacity. Studies have shown that being awake for 17 consecutive hours impairs cognitive performance to the same degree as a blood alcohol level of 0.5. You are, in other words, functioning drunk when you are chronically sleep deprived. And yet so many people wear their lack of sleep as a badge of honor. I only need 4 hours. No, you don't. You are doing yourself a profound disservice and calling it hustle. Sleep is not laziness. Sleep is infrastructure. Sleep is the period during which your brain consolidates learning, processes emotion, repairs tissue, and prepares you for the demands of the next day. Protecting your sleep is one of the most productive things you can do. Similarly, and I know this isn't glamorous, your diet matters. The quality of the fuel you put in your body directly affects your energy levels, your mood, your cognitive function, and your capacity for sustained effort. You cannot eat processed, nutrient-depleted food every day and wonder why you feel foggy and unmotivated by 2 in the afternoon. You cannot go 8 hours without drinking water and then blame your lack of focus on laziness. Your brain is 75% water. Dehydration impairs every single cognitive function. Drink the water and movement. I know, you've heard this 1,000 times, exercise. But let me give you a framing you may not have heard before. Exercise is not primarily about how your body looks. Exercise is about how your brain works. When you exercise, even modestly, even just a brisk 30-minute walk, your brain releases a cocktail of neurochemicals including dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, and BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which scientists sometimes call miracle grow for the brain. These chemicals improve mood, increase energy, enhance focus, reduce anxiety. And this is the key part. They increase your capacity for disciplined, motivated, directed action. In other words, exercise is one of the most direct interventions available to you for killing laziness. Not because you'll feel motivated while you're doing it. Most of the time you won't. But because of what it does to your neurochemistry afterward. The person who exercises regularly is chemically different. More energetic, more motivated, more disciplined than the person who doesn't. Not because they have stronger willpower, because they have better brain chemistry. Take care of the machine. The machine is not separate from the work. The machine is the foundation for everything. All right. I want to stop here for a moment because I've been talking for a while and I want to check in with you. Not physically, you can't respond, but internally. How are you feeling? Because I know for some of you, this is landing somewhere specific. There's a name coming up, a project, a relationship, a conversation you've been avoiding, a dream you almost forgot you had. I know because I see it on people's faces every time I speak about this. The moment recognition hits, when abstract ideas suddenly become concrete and personal and, oh, he's talking about me. If that's happening for you, hold on to it. Don't let slide back into the comfortable numbness of entertainment. This is signal, this feeling of recognition and discomfort and quiet urgency, this is your life trying to get your attention. Let me tell you about one more person before we get to the final movement of this speech. Her name is Maya. Maya was 34 years old when I met her, and she had spent her adult life in the grip of what I describe as elegant paralysis. She was educated. She was intelligent. She was articulate and passionate and absolutely full of ideas. She had a vision for a social enterprise that would help young women in underserved communities access education and mentorship. She had the skills, she had some connections. She had genuinely everything she needed to begin. But she didn't begin. For 7 years, she had the idea. For 7 years, she attended networking events, joined Facebook groups, had coffee with potential collaborators, made notes in beautiful journals, refined her vision document, and told everyone who asked that she was working on something big or working on something big for 7 years. When I sat with Maya and asked her what was in the way, she said what everyone says. I don't know. I just can't seem to get started. Maybe I'm just not disciplined enough. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe the idea needs more development. And I said to her, Maya, your idea has been developing for 7 years. It doesn't need more development. It needs you to begin. And I think you know that. So let's talk about what you're actually afraid of. The silence that followed was long. And in that silence, the real truth surfaced. Maya finally said, if I try and it fails, if I put everything I have into this and it doesn't work, then I don't just lose the project. I lose the dream. Right now, the dream is perfect and intact and full of potential. If I start and it doesn't work, I lose that. I can't go back to having it be perfect. And I don't know if I can handle that. There it was. 7 years of procrastination, explained in 4 sentences. She was protecting the dream from the risk of reality. And she was, in doing so, killing it far more surely than any failure ever could. Because a dream that stays a dream, perfect and protected and never tested, is not a dream. It's a fantasy. And living in a fantasy is the most sophisticated form of self-deception there. No lengthy analysis of what went wrong. No extended period of beating yourself up before you're allowed to move forward. Just start again. This sounds simple, and it is simple, but simple is not easy. And the reason it's not easy is that we have been culturally conditioned to believe that starting over is shameful, that having to start over means we failed. That the person who can maintain a perfect unbroken streak of disciplined behavior is the successful one. And the person who keeps falling and getting back up is a failure who isn't disciplined enough. That is exact. Maybe it's a relationship you need to repair, or a truth you need to speak, or a gift you've been hoarding inside yourself because the world hasn't given you permission to share it yet. But you have a book. I know you do. Because you don't end up in a room like this, reading these words, feeling what you're feeling right now, unless something in you is still reaching for something. Unless there is still, underneath whatever years of disappointment and deferred dreams and careful practical living have layered on top of it, a fire, small maybe, flickering, almost out, but not out. Not yet. And here is what I know about that fire: it does not need perfect conditions to burn. It does not need your life to be in order. It does not need the fear to disappear, or the timing to be right, or the resources to be available, or the people around you to believe in you. It does not need any of those things. It needs one thing. It needs you to stop smothering it. Every time you choose comfort over growth, you smother it a little more. Every time you choose the couch over the work, you smother it. Every time you say tomorrow, when today is available, you smother it. Every time you let the voice of doubt be the last word, you smother it. And every time you choose to act, even in the smallest way, even with shaking hands, even when you're tired and afraid and uncertain, you feed it. And a fire that is being fed, even slowly, even carefully, even with small and seemingly insignificant pieces of fuel, that fire does not go out. It grows. And one day, not all at once, but one day, you look up and the flickering flame has become something you can feel from across the room. Something that lights not just your path, but the paths of the people around you. Something that cannot be ignored or dismissed or explained away. Something that was always in you, waiting, patient, faithful to a possibility that you almost gave up on. That day is coming. But it only comes for the people who refuse to let the fire go out. You are not lazy. You are afraid, you are tired, you are stuck in stories that were never yours. You are living in a world specifically designed to make comfort the easiest choice. All of those things are real. All of those things are challenges worth acknowledging. But none of them are the truth about what you are capable of. You are capable of more than you have shown, more than you have tried, more than you have allowed yourself to believe. I am not just saying that as a generic inspirational statement. I'm saying it because I have seen what happens when human beings decide, really decide, not hope, not wish, not intend, but decide to stop settling. I have seen people rewrite their stories in real time. I have seen people build things from nothing. I have seen people come back from losses and failures and broken places that should have broken them for good, and instead come out the other side with a depth and a clarity and a power that the comfortable, unlived life never could have given them. I have been one of those people. And you can be one of those people. Not someday. Now, the laziness you came in here carrying today, I want you to leave it in this room. Not because it was never real. It was real. But because you are more real. You are bigger than it. You have always been bigger than it. And now that you can see it for what it is, fear dressed up as comfort, comfort dressed up as contentment, contentment dressed up as wisdom. Now that you can see the lie clearly, you have a choice you didn't have before. You can choose differently, starting today. Starting with one thing, starting with one thing, starting with the next step, however small, toward the person you know you are meant to be. Don't die with your book inside you. Write it, build it, live it, live it. The world has been waiting long enough, and so have you. Now